The development of the first atomic weapon is often associated with the high desert labs of New Mexico and the massive industrial centers of the Manhattan Project. However, the race actually began in 1938 in Berlin. German physicists were the first to split the uranium atom, giving the Nazi military an immediate lead in nuclear research. They possessed the captured mines of Czechoslovakia and some of the most capable scientific minds in the world. To lead this effort, the military appointed Werner Heisenberg. For the Allies, Heisenberg's expertise represented the single greatest intellectual threat of the war. He understood the physics required to build a bomb and had the state's full support to acquire the materials. Building a bomb required more than just splitting atoms. It required a self-sustaining chain reaction. To control that reaction, Heisenberg needed a substance known as a moderator. When uranium atoms split, they release neutrons that travel at incredible speeds. If they move too fast, they miss their targets and the reaction dies. A moderator acts as a speed breaker. It captures and slows the neutrons just enough so they successfully strike and split the next uranium targets, allowing the reaction to multiply and release massive amounts of energy. The ability to control this reaction became the primary bottleneck for the project. Moving nuclear physics out of the laboratory and into a functional weapon required finding a moderator that could be produced at scale. Walther Bothe, a leading nuclear chemist, conducted the critical tests for Germany. He tested graphite as a moderator, but his sample was impure. Based on his flawed results, Bothe reported that graphite was ineffective, leading the German High Command to abandon the material entirely. At the same time, Enrico Fermi was running his own experiments at Columbia University. Unlike Bothe, Fermi used highly purified graphite. He quickly realized it was an ideal, inexpensive moderator for a nuclear reactor. Physicist Leo Szilard recognized the danger immediately. If the Germans saw Fermi's findings, they would realize graphite worked, pivot their strategy, and likely accelerate their path to a weapon. Szilard convinced Albert Einstein and other Allied scientists to enforce a total publication blackout. They intentionally buried their research to ensure that the secrets of graphite remained hidden from the Nazi scientific community. Left in the dark by this information blackout, the German project abandoned graphite and focused exclusively on a rare substance called heavy water. This choice created a severe supply bottleneck that the Allies could now physically target. Germany's nuclear ambitions now relied on a single hydroelectric plant in the mountains of occupied Norway. This was the only facility in the world capable of producing heavy water in significant quantities. The first blow came from French intelligence agents. They managed to smuggle the plant's existing heavy water supply out of Norway, using decoy flights to trick German fighter planes, while the real cargo was moved to safety. After Germany restarted production, Allied-trained Norwegian commandos launched Operation Gunnerside. They scaled a 200-meter frozen cliff in the dead of night, infiltrated the fortress, and planted explosives directly on the heavy water machinery. When Germany tried to move their final remaining stocks back to the homeland on the SF Hydro ferry, local rebels placed a time bomb in the ship's hull. The ferry and the heavy water sank to the bottom of a deep lake. The destruction of this supply line effectively ended the German military's ability to fuel a nuclear reactor, bringing their weapons program to a halt. As the war in Europe drew to a close, the final nuclear threat remained in the Pacific. Japan had the scientific expertise to build a bomb, but lacked the physical uranium required to fuel it. In a final, desperate exchange, Germany loaded the massive U-234 submarine with advanced rocket technology and 500 kilograms of uranium ore, bound for Japan. The voyage was interrupted by Germany's surrender. The U-boat captains surrendered to American forces at sea. Upon hearing the news, the two Japanese officers on board chose to commit suicide rather than face capture. This interception meant the final physical components for an Axis bomb were delivered directly into the hands of the United States. This captured material arrived as the United States was struggling to produce enough fuel for its own weapons. Despite the massive industrial scale of facilities like Oak Ridge, enrichment was a slow and difficult process. Historical investigations suggest that the German uranium captured from the U-boat was already highly enriched. Evidence indicates the Manhattan Project may have integrated this German material directly into the bombs that were eventually used against Japan. Had that submarine reached its destination, Japan would have possessed the raw fuel for its own nuclear program, potentially introducing a new and unpredictable threat during the final months of the Pacific War. The American nuclear project reached the finish line by utilizing the resources of its enemies. The success of the Manhattan Project was built on a foundation of German scientific errors, Norwegian sabotage, and the interception of the very materials intended to fuel the Axis war effort.